I'm Tenitra Batiste, and heading into the bye week, we attempted to define this team's identity heading into week 8. It feels like the Falcons' identity is identified and its inconsistency.
I'm Aaron Freeman, still waiting on that Michael Penix breakthrough performance on the road, and it's not going to be this week, but, we got 2 more road games coming up shortly, so maybe it'll be then.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and I was hoping I didn't get to this place, but I'm upset, and we got to talk about it.
ATL! ATL!
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Falcons Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me, our Locked On Falcons host, Aaron Freeman, and Locked On analyst, Jarvis Davis. Falcons senior reporter, Tori McElhaney, of course, is traveling. We wish her and pray for safe travels. She'll be back with us, of course, next week. And our squad show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So are you sure it wasn't just a little more about the play calling? We'll discuss also the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll talk about it, as Jarvis alluded to. And can they just do what they're supposed to do come Sunday? We'll download on that. But first, the 20-10 loss. Is there a way to make it make sense? So, Jarvis, we sometimes hear about the Super Bowl hangover. It goes in both directions, right? You've heard about it where the team that wins kind of stumbles into the next season because they're like, okay, we achieved our goal. But then you hear about it with the hangover of the team that lost and they're coming for everybody, or sometimes they can't make it make sense. So I want to go with the Super Bowl champion version of the hangover, right? Where, hey, you win, you get a big game, the biggest game of the year and the biggest game of in the world. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, I climbed the mountain. Did a young Falcons team, especially on offense, maybe look like one kind of that had that type of, I'm going to put it in air quotes, hangover after that big win over the Bills Monday night?
I don't know if I would necessarily call it a hangover, because a lot of times we know where a hangover comes from because we was out here drinking, getting it in. I don't think that the Falcons, from a football standpoint, were out there just getting it in and they just kind of took this game lightly. I think there was just a lack of execution, because going back and watching the tape, there were several moments where I was like, why isn't Michael Penix getting rid of the football? There was, especially after his first read wasn't there. It would just seem like he just had hesitation. He pulled the ball down for no reason whatsoever. There was one particular play where it had a double slant going inside. Darnell Mooney came. He was in the slot. He jumped down in, and there was a linebacker kind of waiting maybe about a couple of yards away. So I understood him not throwing it there. But you had your 6'4", 215-pound or wide receiver in Drake London was right there. It was open. He showed you his numbers. Get rid of the football. Give it to him. And it was just things like that. The first play after the turnover, Caden Ellis interception. The first play after that, they'd run a toss sweep to Bijan Robinson. The safety coming down. You got Elijah Wilkinson coming out there. He actually gets his block and turns that butt. He seals that bad boy. Once the offensive lineman turns his butt like that, that means you're supposed to go the opposite way. That means he's sealing off the outside. All you had a crease to go outside. But for whatever reason, Bijan decides to cut that bad boy inside. And guess what? When you cut back inside on a toss sweep, guess where you're going? You're going back into the other defenders. There was nothing but red jerseys in there. And Drake even had his block. And his man ended up making the play because Drake did not expect him to be inside like that. You have to press that hole and get outside, man. Like, you can set up your block a little bit, give him a little time to get onto his block. But once he did that, he should have immediately put that foot in the ground and got to the sideline and see how far he can go. So it was just, I wouldn't necessarily say they were hungover, like, yeah, we big time now. We doing our thing. Back-to-back home games. We out here putting up points and all that stuff. I wouldn't say that. But oh my gosh, it was definitely a lack of execution on the players' part, because that was just, you can't go out like that. Like, you can't go out like that, not making plays when they were there. They were there. Plays were there to be made, and they did not make them.
Yeah. And I think too, Free, if I can just expand with that definition of hangover, I'll take what Jarvis said and say maybe in this instance, the hangover wouldn't be so much that they were feeling themselves and thinking that they were just world beaters, but maybe subconsciously thinking, hey, if I just do the basics or the bare minimum, I'm still going to get a quality result.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of clarify. I think when we talk about the sort of hangover where you're talking about, T, where we were feeling ourselves, like that to me felt like the Carolina game coming off of that Vikings win. They, I think, were feeling themselves a little bit too much and sort of looked past the Panthers, and they got taken to it. I think the difference between this game, going back to Jarvis's point, the 49ers are a good football team, right? And I think, probably from the outside looking in, maybe a lot of people overlooked them because of all the injuries, and we talked about that, and it's like, oh, okay, well, they're vulnerable, but they've been dealing with injuries all season long. Brock Purdy's been out, George Kittle's been out, but they found ways to win football games, right? They've shown a resiliency this year despite all those injuries. And so going into this game, I don't think the Falcons went into this game, or I'd like to believe the Falcons went into this game thinking like, oh, well, Fred Warner's injured, and so this is going to be a cakewalk victory. I don't think that was the case. I think, as Jarvis said, they went in there, tried their best, and the 49ers came out there and out-executed them and basically kind of punched them in the mouth and won this game in a lot of ways in the trenches. And when you do that, that leads to some of the struggles that I think the Falcons were undergoing. And, Jarvis mentioned the play where Penix had a kind of a turn down to Drake London. And I believe that was the, correct me if I'm wrong, Jarvis, that was the first red zone trip on that third down.
Yes.
Where they had to settle for the field goal. Yep. And it's like plays like that you sit there and you go, when we talk about, one of the criticisms of Michael Penix has been, his unwillingness to attack the middle of the field. And plays like that sort of are essentially like he's not beating the allegations with plays like that because there is that open window, and you wonder how much of last week's game, where he had those slants to Drake London late in that game and they got broken up, and one of them was almost an interception, and you're thinking, is he in his head about throwing this over the middle, that he's worried about that, and that leads to that second hesitation that you can't necessarily have in those situations where it's do or die. And obviously that not being able to get those 4 extra points plays a huge part in how this game sort of plays out over the course of the next 3 quarters. So I feel like if we're going to say there was some lingering effect of last week, it's things like that I think sort of linger into this game. But in terms of, do I feel like the Falcons took the 49ers lightly? Not really. I just kind of think they went into this game expecting, okay, we're going to go out there, we're going to do our thing. And the 49ers are like, all right, we'll see you. And, they went out there and played a better football game.
Yeah, they did.
And I think, to add what you're saying, and there was another play that he's just not beating the allegations, man. Tatum Bethune was not getting his drops at all. He was basically acting as a spy, essentially, throughout the game. He wasn't, because, Fred gonna get that drop. He gonna get that drop. He gonna get into his drops, and he gonna try to find something and get active. Tatum Bethune was basically just guarding grass for the most part. Like, because Michael Penix did not make him move. He did not even act like he was trying to layer the ball over his head at all at any point during the game. So when you think about it from that aspect of it, he gonna continue to see this type of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever you put out on tape, people are going to continue to use it against you every single time.
And it's interesting you say that, Jarvis, because our girl Tori, who, like I said, is on her way traveling back from San Fran, gave some really damning numbers, if you will. She said that when you look at Michael Penix Jr., and I want to talk about him first because I know we kind of have a question that we're going to pose, but she said from Next Gen Stats, Michael Penix Jr. did not complete a single one of his 9 passes under pressure in week 7 against the 49ers, the most such pass attempts in a game without a completion by any quarterback since 2023, Sam Howell. You don't want to be in a conversation compared to Sam Howell.
Lord.
And to your point, Jarvis and Aaron, even something that we talked about before, it's that predictability. If everybody knows, hey, we send pressure, it's going to be a problem for Penix, and it's that simple, then why wouldn't you keep going back to that formula when it's paying dividends, and not just things like, hey, why are you so quick to just throw it to the check down guy, or you're not even looking for that second option or even that third option? Use your legs. Like, even if all you're using your legs for is to buy yourself just a half a second or a second, it's something. Or we're not saying you need to be a mobile quarterback, but sometimes I think that in Michael Penix Jr.'s mind, or at least it feels like, hey, I have a plan, I'm going to throw it. If I can't throw it to that person in that moment, then that's going to be a problem. And what I challenge that for, and again, that doesn't mean that he can't evolve into that. Next question, segue. But it does make you think, okay, I'm still looking. I know it's only been 8 games, but I'm still looking for that elite processor. I'm still looking for that elite processing that we need to see in order for breakdowns like what you just described, or at the end of the first half, so that we don't see those breakdowns more often than not. And listen, there are moments that obviously Michael Penix has had. If we look at those last 2 games, I mean, he was looking like he was trending in the direction of world beater, right? At home, you cannot knock him for what he did against the Commanders. 26, 313 yards, couple touchdowns. Against Buffalo, 20 of 32, 250 yards, a touchdown. And then there was last night, and it's 21 of 38 for 241, but the numbers aren't that different, Free, from what we saw in those games, especially the one against the Bills. But we know that the results of what those numbers did, that's what wasn't there. So Jarvis, Free, I got to ask you guys, does MPX's inconsistency change your outlook on who he can become as a quarterback, on us seeing the elite processor?
Well, for me, I don't know if it changes my outlook. You mentioned the numbers. You're right. Like the numbers look better. The box score looks better than what the film looks like, because a lot of those completions were kind of just like screens and, check downs and whatnot. And you sort of mentioned it, where it does feel like, and this is not a bad trait to have, but it's that idea of like living to play another down, where it's like, okay, boom, get to my back foot on my drop back. The route concept isn't open. Check it down to Bijan, and then let's keep it moving. And that's not a bad state of affairs to be. That was basically what Matt Ryan was for his entire career. But you sort of balance that out, where it's like, well, then I'm going to throw the ball to Roddy White and Tony Gonzalez and Julio Jones. And so we can have those plays in between those plays. And the problem with the Falcons last night was they weren't getting those plays from their playmakers other than maybe Kyle Pitts in this game. And so when we talk about Penix, like, there is a big dichotomy between Michael Penix at home and Michael Penix on the road, that we have seen this consistently. And again, it's what, 8-9 games into his NFL career. So it's still early. We know consistently in this league, young quarterbacks tend to struggle on the road. Matt Ryan struggled on the road early in his career, and eventually you figure it out. But it's one of those things where it's like, do we have does this fan base, does this organization have the patience to wait for Michael Penix to kind of figure it out when it comes to the road? Because again, as we talked about last night, you got some really tough road matchups that you kind of have to win, coming up in a couple of weeks. 4 of your next, 6 games are on the road, and you're probably going to have to go at least 3-1 in those games if you want to really take control of your playoff hopes at this point in time. And so you don't really have the time to be like, well, he's just a young quarterback and he'll figure it out. And once we get to like year 3, he'll be good on the road. And it's like, we can't really wait to year 3. We need month 3 at this point in time. So I think that those are the things that it's just a question of, my outlook hasn't changed on Michael Penix, but it is one of those things where it's like, until he figures that out, it does kind of lower the ceiling on where he can be as a quarterback until we can start seeing better play outside of Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah, and you're right. This, in an ideal situation, sure, That's why you gave Kirk Cousins the 4 years, but essentially the 2-year out, because your thought was, hey, and then you go and draft Michael Penix, because at the end of that 2-year window, you're hoping that he would be ready to become the true successor and heir to the throne. But that didn't happen. And so that entire timeline has been sped up. And now here we are, and you're looking at the Falcons. Again, we know that it's only week 7, but you're looking at the Falcons in 11th place in the NFC, and what a climb that's going to be, because of what we thought this was a gauntlet, right, of these first 6 games. And then you look at what the next 6 look like, if for no other reason, because of so many road games. And it does make you pause, because you just don't have time for Michael Penix Jr. to kind of figure it out. But that said, Jarvis, when you look at where we are in its totality, his inconsistency, does it change your outlook overall on who he can become as a QB?
No, because I look at how this team is built. This team is built to run the football, and that's supposed to help you be patient. That helps me be patient, because they have Bijan Robinson. He's the best player on this team, right? So when you think about it from that aspect of it, my projections on who he can be as a quarterback don't change, because it's just a matter of them figuring out what the backup plan looks like, right? Like, when the running game isn't working, what are you going to do?
Yes.
Or what can you do when the running game is working? That's what you need to figure out. I said this after the game last night, on the show last night, this was a game that I was expecting Darnell Mooney to have a breakout game because of the matchup, right? The back end of San Francisco defense, I liked him in that matchup. And there were times throughout the game where you say, okay, Darnell Mooney is starting to kind of catch himself. I think at one point he had about 3 for 60, which is about 22 yards, a little bit over 22 yards per catch. Yeah, that's some success. And I just would have liked for it to have been focused on more. So when there is something that we can point out going into a game and you saw success with it, that means that the quarterback and the wide receiver were able to connect. And so that means it was working. It's just a matter of them not really, really digging into it and really trying to take advantage of it, like we saw Kyle Shanahan do when he was just getting in 22 personnel and said, stop it.
Yeah. And, one of the things that came out of that Bills game was, seeing the stat where the Falcons were really efficient going against zone. A lot of that was throwing to Drake London, and less efficient throwing against man coverage this season. And in last night's game, it seemed to be consistently the one guy that they were going to in man was Kyle Pitts, and that's a big reason why he had the success. And you're expecting Drake and Darnell to kind of be also in that mix as man beaters, and they weren't there, as sort of piggybacking on what Jarvis said. And until you can get that consistency from all, and we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, where it's like you have a big 3 or really a big 4 in terms of your offensive skill positions in addition to Michael Penix. And when those guys play well, like, this offense is going to thrive. When those guys don't play as well as you want them to, this offense is going to look like it did on Sunday night. And so that's going to be the key, I think, for this team to truly unlock their consistency of, can we consistently coming off the Washington and Buffalo game, it was like, oh, it looks like they're consistently able to get the ball into the hands of their playmakers. And then it kind of stagnated last night. And it just kind of fuels that whole difference between what this team looks like when they play in Mercedes-Benz Stadium and what they look like when they play away from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And until they can kind of close the gap between those 2 points, we're going to get more of these ups and downs from this team all season long.
Yeah, and close the gap between what a game looks like when your best player is having an all-world night and when your best player is having a subpar night. Not saying that was on the ground, that is, for Bijan Robinson, because he still had his usual solid scrimmage game, right? But I was thinking about this even and we're talking about the world champion, so let me put a caveat on that. But a game in which A.J. Brown had a couple of big catches for the Philadelphia Eagles, but Saquon Barkley still ain't Saquon Barkley. And yesterday they managed to not just have a solid game, but they punched it in 4 times. And so, see, that's the other piece. Like we're still having that conversation about, yeah, you guys can eat up yards oftentimes on the ground or in the air, but what is it producing? Like it still only produced 10 points last night for all intents and purposes. So when I look at another stat that Tori threw out there about the inability to consistently run the ball, Bijan with a 28.6% success rate, which is his second lowest this season, I'm thinking, okay, but again, that means that this team, whether it's the players, the coaching staff, or all of the above, you've got to figure it out when another team has said, I'm going to stop him, and then I'm going to dare the rest of you to win for the Falcons. You got to be ready to say, we're going to win. But that said, are you guys sure it still wasn't just a little bit more about the play calling? We'll talk about that when we take it under further review. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. It's seriously simple to use and gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. So whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. Learn more at rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's rippling.com/lockedonnfl for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. This episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. So playing Prize Picks can be super fun. It's a simple way to add more excitement to football. You can just pick more or less on player projections, like whether or not Bijan Robinson is going to have 100 or more yards from scrimmage, or score a touchdown in the game. Happened, and you're in the game. So you're going to love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute, and you can take advantage of stacks. If you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass rush, pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So, Aaron, I know during the post-game show, we didn't want to hang the loss all on how Zach Robinson called the game, but the Falcons couldn't or maybe didn't take deep shots on a consistent basis. They didn't work the middle of the field where, who knows, maybe they could have had some success as examples of what maybe could have led to a different outcome. But other than that lone touchdown of the night that came off the pass to Bijan, they didn't really try to get the ball to their running backs out of the backfield either. So just kind of revisiting that now that you've had a chance to kind of decompress, maybe look at some film. Are you a little concerned about these missed opportunities, maybe being also a lack of foresight to see how any of that could have worked with the game when the game plan wasn't working, or maybe could have been adjusted to at halftime?
Yeah, look, I think it's more than fair to criticize some of the play calling from Zach Robinson. I think that's always going to be the case in a football game. You're always going to find some issues with the play calling, especially when it doesn't work, where it's like, well, maybe we could have done this and it might have worked. I do think the reason why I'm a little hesitant to really sort of pour gasoline on that flame is because I do think the Falcons were trying to do some of the things that they were successful at doing the last couple of weeks. And again, because the other team is well coached too, I think the 49ers were probably like, okay, well, we've seen them have a lot of success doing, X, Y, and Z. So let's try to stop X, Y, and Z. And I think the 49ers had more success than we would like to believe, being able to take care of business in that regard, despite some of the issues that they were dealing with on defense. And so I feel like obviously, the Falcons need to be able to make those in-game adjustments, as you said, T, where it's just like, okay, this is not really working. What's our plan B? What's our plan C? And that to me is where I think if you're going to be critical of the play calling, that's where I think things fell a little short, where it was like they have kind of their go-tos where it's just like, we're going to run the football. We're going to do some of this thing with Drake down the seam, and we're going to have some play action. We're going to have Bijan as a pass catcher. And then it's like, this is not working. What do we do now? And it's like, screen pass. Let's, and so like, I think that's really kind of, and when we talk about Zach Robinson and his lack of experience and not having as many reps, and like, I think those are the things that kind of fuel that sort of criticism of, you don't have this super experienced play caller who's been calling plays in the league for 8 years or however many years, like Kyle Shanahan was when he came to Atlanta, like Dirk Cutter was when he came to Atlanta, where it's just like, okay, I've been through the ups and downs. I know, like, okay, this is how we kind of get things back on track. And you're still going through that learning process with Zach Robinson. And so I think it's more than fair to criticize him at this stage. He still looks like a young offensive coordinator at time, and experienced offensive coordinator at time. And I think this game showed some of those weaknesses. But, I do feel like there has been significant progress the last couple of weeks, but unfortunately it felt like it kind of hit a wall on the road against the 49ers.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to say that if we had to hang our hats on something, Jarvis, it's probably just the inability to kind of make adjustments, to kind of see what's going on in the game real time, and then to be able to say, okay, we're going to have to reset, because clearly you almost have to throw our full game plan out of the door, especially at half, and see if maybe we can reset in second half. And you did see a little something that worked in the beginning of the second half, but if we're honest, you got to give half the credit to only having to go half field. I mean, if we're being honest, right? So if we're looking at the rest of the game, where maybe you had to go 3/4 or almost the full length of the field, and then you've got to go into the full-on toolkit, that's when it looked a little bit different. And that's when it started to show like, hey, maybe those things that you would do if you were a little bit more seasoned, maybe that it's kind of showing itself in that the adjustments just weren't there.
Yeah. And I think that, you're talking about that being seasoned and giving your quarterback options, because if your quarterback is basically getting ready to tuck the ball after his first read not being open, that's play design to me. That's partly play design, because when you talk about play design and being able to have you got to have your hot read. Okay, what if they send pressure? Okay, I know exactly where I'm going. If they send if we're outnumbered, right? If a free rusher coming, I have to know where I'm going with the football.
Yes.
And then you have to have your intermediate, right? You have to have your intermediate routes. There was one particular play, and it just looked like it was Drake, Darnell, and I feel like it was Casey Washington. All those guys looked like they were just running off. They were just doing runoff, like clear out routes. I'm just like, what is going on? Because a lot of times when you have that play call, you have someone coming underneath, right? So you can say you want them to draw away all the underneath coverage, and then you have your guy coming underneath and getting the ball, and they can go to work. But it wasn't set up like that. All they had was Bijan going out into the flat, and he had basically kind of just, cut the route off, and it was nothing. There was nowhere for Michael Penix to go with the football. It's stuff like that happened often. So when we talk about play calling and all that stuff, like, yeah, the plays I feel like are okay, but it's all about design at this point, because like you said, you're in your second year as a play caller. You have to make sure that your quarterback is being set up for success. If you don't have those things, like I mentioned, the check route, the hot read, what's my hot read? What an intermediate route going? Like if they're in this particular coverage, I know that Drake is going to be open if he's running this dig. Like those are the type of things that need to be conversed about leading up to, this game. Now, Darnell Mooney did say that he didn't expect that Salah was going to throw that much man coverage at them. But however, when you have man coverage.
Right.
I know when I got man coverage on Madden, hey man, look, I know exactly what I'm about to do. Either I'm running a go or I'm running this slant, baby, because I know because you have to know your personnel.
Yeah.
You got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London, you got these big body wide receivers. If they're locking up and man, you know that before the ball is snapped. Hey man, get the ball in their hands and let them go to work and make a play. Yeah. That's what you were able to do, pretty consistently at home. So yeah, I feel like it's play design and not really necessarily giving your quarterback options. And then of course you combine that with your quarterback holding on to the football and not getting rid of it and being indecisive with it. So it was just a combination of a lot of boo-boo. And I think that, it came out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think if you know your quarterback's tendencies, right, then I think at this point, although you only maybe had 3 games with him officially last year, as far as like real-time game experience versus just maybe working with him through camp and the like, but at some point you kind of know, okay, he has a tendency that if he sees pressure coming, this is what he's going to do. This is going to be his reaction. So my goal is maybe more mental than anything. How do I help my quarterback get over those mental humps of it? And maybe to your point, that includes design. So, okay, MPX, Mike, let's go through this. 49ers, they're going to bring pressure. Yeah, we're thinking they're going to play a zone, but what if they come man and what if they bring all the pressure? What's our first answer? What's our second option? What's our I think that's a kind of conversation that at this point needs to be had, because you kind of know what it is that his tendencies are as far as like when he gets himself into a particular kind of, we'll say, in situations that he can't easily bail himself out of. We'll say it that way. Real quick, I wanted to ask you guys as well, if we're being honest, taking nothing away from what Christian McCaffrey was able to do with his success on the ground, but you got to think about this. George Kittle is back. He wasn't 100%, but he was back enough close to 100% to have made an impact in the game the way he did. But take the O-line for the 49ers out of it. Think about George Kittle and what he was able to do to get McCaffrey free. I was just thinking, after you had a chance, maybe free to, again, process it. Again, Jarvis, look at the film. Was there anything that you saw, anything else that you saw as to why, not named Elijah Wilkinson, Jarvis, anything else that you saw that maybe was a reason for why Bijan was having the struggles that he was having in running the ball?
I think that they just attacked that zone scheme. They know that the Falcons were going to stick to their outside zone, and they never had a counter for it. I think that we talk about how Kyle Shanahan, on this show, on the Falcons Squad, about how he's evolved as a play caller.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, sticking that bad boy, that play action and sticking the ball in the stomach, coming out of that bad boy. Yep. Outside zone scheme. Yep. That's what he's going to do. And you're going to have to stop it. What did we see that he was doing last night? Gap schemes, counter, coming. George Kittle was an extra offensive lineman.
Yeah.
He was absolutely just mashing on from a blocking standpoint. So when you think about it from that aspect, I just really feel like this game right here really opens some things up to say, all right. And Free and I even talked about this leading up to the season. We talking about gave the baseball analogy. Like, okay, I know my fastball, that's my stuff. Mm-hmm. But when are you gonna bring the changeup, or is it the curveball? Like, and you got to know when to throw it. And I think that Zach Robinson hasn't figured out when to throw the curveball or that changeup.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And it speaks to the larger conversation we're having, where it's just like, you have a plan A, and when plan A isn't working, what is your plan B? What is your counter? What is those types of things? And that's something that the Falcons still need to figure out.
Indeed. They need to figure that one out. So the good, the bad, the ugly. Yes, fan base, we will try to find the good. We'll unpack that in next up. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025, from footwork to breathwork. Athletes sweat all the details. So Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model, and you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season, and you can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. So like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. My gentlemen, friends, I challenge you to find some good, because we always try to. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to call out some bad and some ugly that maybe we saw in last night's game, but we'll try to start this one off on a positive note. Jarvis, give me something good that you saw last night.
Zach Harrison, come on now. Like that, this is an easy one. The way he was playing last night, that was the only defensive lineman that I can give like a strong kudos to you, sir, for going out there and stepping up and playing your game and being a guy to get off blocks, get penetration, get upfield, because once Christian McCaffrey was pretty clean when he got the football, for the most part. But you did see Zach Harrison make the TFL, make that big play, and drop him down for like a -3 or 4. Those are the plays that you need. First play of the game, when they're out there, you sack Mac Jones, you put him on his back, like immediate, quick slap rip, get down there, get downfield, get flat. Put your hands on that quarterback and don't let him go, and put him on the ground. So that was my good for sure last night. I love to see how Zach Harrison has developed as a player. Now, albeit it was he's been slow with it a little bit for a lot of people, but I feel like, there are different factors that come into play when you talk about why he's been slow to develop. But now he's in the right system. He's the right fit for what Jeff Ulbrich is trying to do. And you saw that come out last night.
Yeah, Zach Harrison, 4 tackles on the night, the only sack of the night for the Falcons, the one that you mentioned that started the game. 2 of the tackles for loss, that the team had only 1 of the 4 QB hits on the night. So yeah, solid night from Zach Harrison indeed. And what about for you, Free? Give me something good from last night.
I apologize if this comes off as too cynical, but Kyle Pitts was one of the good. And if you're Kyle Pitts, you're like, hey, I'm in a contract here. I did my job, guys. Like, I don't know about the rest of this team, but like I went out there, I was beating man coverage. I'm off to the best start of my career so far. So, I don't know if it's going to be here in Atlanta or somewhere else, but I'm trying to get paid this year. So Kyle Pitts, hey, keep getting them checks. I don't know who's going to give you that check. Someone's going to give you the check based off how you're playing this year. But that's a good thing if you're Kyle Pitts. I don't know if that's a good thing for the team when only Kyle Pitts is the guy that shows up. But hey, Kyle Pitts was good last night, I thought.
Yeah, because he, of course, with Drake London, both had 10 targets, but Drake only 4 receptions, Kyle 7 for 62 yards, averaging almost 9 yards per catch. So yeah, a solid night from Kyle Pitts as well. And like you said, we don't know what it's going to bring for the future or for the long term, but at least maybe for this season, the Falcons can benefit off of it somewhat. It's just the hope is that they start benefiting and getting into the end zone with said Kyle Pitts. All right, Jarvis, we spent about 3, 4, 6 minutes on the good. We tried. Now it's time to get back to the real, the bad of last night.
Oh,
and hold your strong comments for the ugly. So remember, we still got that. So just going with the bad, and we're going from top to middle to oh boy.
I guess I'll go with my bad for it has to be Michael Penix, because that was kind of frustrating to watch. When you think about just going back and looking at the film and you kind of trying to see what he saw on a particular play. Like that, I go back to that play that I talked about had the double slants. Like I said, first read not there. Cool. I understand you're not making that throw. But that second one was there. It was there. Because guess what? Darnell Mooney basically held that linebacker. So it was free space. You got it's freewheeling. Get about a Drake and let them work. And those are some of the things that you have to be able to hit those. The OC should not have to tell you to, hey man, if it's not there, go here. No, you're supposed to be able to see that because you see the play. You know what route he's running. You know the timing of the play. You know you have to get it off, and especially if it's the way this team is built. You got these big body people catching the football for you. So yeah, the percentage of the percentage of the pass type of pass that you throw can be low, and it can still be a completion. And they can make you look good. And Drake has made you look good this year. So yeah, I feel like I have to go with when you're talking about bad. I felt like that was really bad, and I think that he's a young quarterback. I understand that, but these are the simple things simple plays that you're going to have to make when you play good football teams. Good football teams are going to force you to make off-beat, off-path type things. Like your first read is not going to be there for good teams for the most part, right? So you got to know what you're going to do when that second read has to come up, because tucking the football and taking the sack, that's not an option. It can't be an option, especially when your play caller dialed it up for you.
Yeah. And good teams also know what the clock looks like heading into halftime and saying, hey, if we can put pressure on him and cause anything, I mean, it could have been an interception, it could have been a sack, it could have been a turnover of some sort. Instead, it ended up
before you went out of bounds, T.
Exactly.
And tried to make a play.
Exactly. That part. So, yeah, when you talk about the things that you need to have a heads up and a mindset about paying attention to, and those little mistakes that begin to loom larger as the game wears on, those are things that you can't just make. You could argue the case about what happened at the end of last week's first half, Aaron, and say, hey, that was it's a game of inches, and the inches just didn't go Drake London's and the Falcons' way, right? This ain't that with what happened at the end of the first half this week. And again, we keep going back to, a field goal opportunity here or a field goal opportunity there, placed at the right time, could have changed the trajectory of the game. But for you, the bad.
Well, you talk about field goals. Let's talk about the kicker, right? That was the bad for me. I'm sorry for you to fall out to you, but the bad for me was like we still got a kicker problem. So again, I don't have anything much else to add to it. It's like we've had a kicker problem the whole year. We still got a kicker problem. And for those of you who missed it, there was a 4th and 1 late in the game that Raheem went for it, as we discussed for like 15 minutes last night on the post game. Like, we understand why Raheem made that choice. He's known to being aggressive, but the sort of underlying cause that sort of fueled that aggressive, where it's like there's no doubt, there's no question in Raheem's mind that he's going for this because he does not trust the kicker to make a 53-yard field goal. And so that, to me, the fact that we're still in this space, and it doesn't feel like, again, call me a pessimist, call me Mr. Negativity, whatever you want to call me, but it doesn't feel like we're going to get out of this space anytime soon until John Parker Romo or somebody else comes in here and just starts making kicks. Based off how it's gone, I don't know how many opportunities they're going to have to make those kicks. And that's why it's so bad.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, I forgot to give my good, which would be Jamal Agnew, for obvious reasons that we already talked about earlier in the game. But I think for the bad, Elijah Wilkinson, I got to just say, that was tough to watch. That was tough to watch. And I think, too, and sometimes it's just, a matter of kind of like where you are in the game and kind of what the game is dictating, if you will. But I think, too, it's par for the course, but you also have to get away from some of those penalties and some of those ill-timed penalties as well. And it was only 6 for 43 yards, but again, in a game where it's tight, there are opportunities there to keep it tight or for the game to break loose, and you just got to be careful with that as well. But guys, what was ugly about it last night? Jarvis, what was ugly?
This one right here touches my soul. When I turned on that doggone tape, free, and I just saw defensive linemen just getting washed down. On the other side of the play, they line up on, let's just say they line on the defensive right side. By the end of the play, they want a defensive left side. That ain't cool. That's not supposed to happen. A man's not supposed to move you like that. I'm sorry, you're in the NFL. Yeah, there's a lot of stalemates for the most part in the run game, you know, from that standpoint. Like when you get washed, I'm gonna say like the old folks used to say, when you get washed down like that, that's ugly. You're not supposed to get moved like that. That it just not supposed to look like that. And I saw that too many times, especially in the run game. Christian McCaffrey just had his pickings of where he wanted to go. And I think that was just such a, can I add one more?
Yeah. An honorable mention for ugly. I mean, it's Manic Monday. So yeah.
Free, don't look at me like that. You know what I'm about to say. Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates, there was this one particular run play. It was a counter. He was already down in the box.
So wait, Jarvis, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So is this from last night, or did you take one more look at it with Jesse Bates?
This is more. This is more. This is a continuation from last night.
I got you.
Like it wasn't what I saw with the missed tackles, none of that.
Oh.
This is just football 101. I'm questioning that right now. Like just for this on this particular play, it was a counter. Mac Jones had handed the ball off to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is making his way up through the line of scrimmage. Mind you, Jesse Bates was already in the box. So more than likely, Jeff Ulbrich probably thought it was going to be a run. And you had AJ Terrell lined up next, was over the wide receiver. So Juwan Jennings had come down kind of like he was almost kind of do a crack block. So I almost kind of gave Jesse a little bit of leeway with that. But once you saw that ball was in Christian McCaffrey's hands, why are you still bracing for that block?
Yeah.
Why are you still bracing for someone to come hit you as if you're going to have to fight over the top of that block to try to get outside because you think the player is going outside? I don't understand that. That was ugly to me because, again, my expectations for Jesse Bates are high. Should I lower them? Because it feels like that's where I should be right now. Like they've come down a little bit, you know, but should I lower me more? That is the question. It's just certain things aren't supposed to happen. Like, why are you bracing for that hit? Because AJ Terrell was right there. He's right there. He's sitting right beside you. So what are you bracing for? Juwan Jennings went by trying to put his hands on you. It was. I don't know. Like I said that this is probably going to be one of those games that when you go back and look at the film, you probably get a little bit more upset.
Yeah.
And I was right.
Yeah, because you definitely said last night, I hope that maybe I see some things that kind of help me to decompress and maybe not get angry. But unfortunately, I agree with you. There were some things that even this morning I was like, oh, I haven't even like completely delved in because admittedly, I was like, this is too much. Like it was because I was getting more and more frustrated by what I saw. And so sometimes you just got to step away to protect your own peace. That's it, Free. What for you was the ugly?
Well, I'm going to let it slide, Jarvis, just because you've been waiting to go on an anti-Jesse Bates rant for a year and a half. So he's like, this is your one. This is your one, Jarvis. You get one. Okay.
I've been waiting for this.
He's like, I've been waiting to take down the king. This man has been going too strong. And he's just been saving it up for 2.5 years. But piggybacking on Jarvis's point, I got to go with my guy JD Bertrand, Captain America. He did not have the mighty shield last night, and it was ugly, right? You get Jarvis talked about it, D-line getting pushed off the ball, offensive linemen just easily climbing to the second level, and JD, it was tough, right? He's a smaller guy, he's young. The reading and recognition isn't quite where it needs to be because of the lack of reps, but he's thrown to the wolves. Maybe if he had a full week of film study like we had at the end of last season when he was kind of forced to have to play late in the season, like maybe he'd be a little bit more prepared, but he looked like a rookie getting thrown out there and getting pushed around, and it was rough. It was rough. So it goes into ugly for me.
Yeah, and you all know my ugly 3 words: John Parker Romo. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what this team needs to do to reset and they do what they're supposed to do come Sunday. We'll talk about that in the look ahead. This episode of our Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, you're going to love how FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. So whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And again, got a lot of ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, and even follow the live lines during games. It's going to make football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. So don't forget, after you wrap up the squad show, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. So guys, with this team heading into week 8 at 500, let me ask before we start talking about the reset, are we back to feeling, Jarvis, like they're the team that loses when it's supposed to lose or win, and then the team that wins when it's supposed to lose? Because I don't know, it kind of, I think that might be a PTSD type of reaction that people are having, but understandably so.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why people feel like that, but for me, I can honestly say that we're talking about this team playing badly. Like we pointed out in the last segment about individuals on specific plays playing badly.
Yeah.
I don't think that this game aligns with the Carolina Panthers in game. I don't think that. I'm not saying that. I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
But is it a barely better? Yeah, we can have that conversation. It's a little bit better. Yeah, sure. But how much better? I don't know. That's a conversation to be had. But for me, I don't think this is one of those scenarios where you're saying like they're a up and down team because they played well and they've lost.
Yeah.
They played well against Tampa Bay, but they lost. And that happens. So, and they lost to a good football team yesterday. I think like Free mentioned earlier, people talking about looking at all the injuries and all that stuff and saying, okay, or the Falcons should be able to win because they don't have Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. It doesn't necessarily work like that. I get it. I see why you said that, but it doesn't necessarily work like that. When you have a guy and Kyle Shanahan, who's an excellent play caller, who understands finding your weakness and stepping on it and mashing on it and continue to poke at it and prong at it for the entire game until you do something about it. And we saw that the Falcons weren't able to do anything about it. And that's how you end up losing to a good football team. So, but yeah, I wouldn't say that this is win the game supposed to lose game supposed to win. I feel like this team has a decent foundation of what they can do. It's just that when you get into those games against those really good football teams, those serious playoff contending teams,
yep,
you tend to kind of fall a little short. And now ask me if we're talking about this is the mid team that we're kind of used to, we might be a little different conversation, might respond a little differently.
Yeah. And just a sidebar, because sometimes I like to read the comments and respond. So first of all, let me go with my guy, Aaron. Aaron is not the angry, negative guy on our show. Like, not at all. Aaron is actually the even-keeled guy. And I saw a couple of comments like, why is Buddy in the middle so angry? Why is he so negative to the Falcons? No, Aaron is just our guy who keeps it real. And he's going to be even keeled with it, but he's going to always keep it real. And what you guys have to understand is also Aaron is trying to protect his peace so that he's trying not to get too high with what happened with the Buffalo Bills and not to get too low with what happened with the Carolina Panthers and the San Francisco 49ers. And this is a long season, so we can't afford to get too high or too low. And we're only wrapping up week 7. So I just had to kind of, point that out, if you will. And then someone else asked about, like, Tenitra, what's your beef with Parker Romo? How much time we got? Okay,
Watch
but if you think about last season, the Kansas City Chiefs and how they made their way to the Super Bowl, they did not look like the world beaters that won 3 championships. They did not look like the team that looks like it's back in form to be able to maybe get back and represent the AFC again. They looked like a team that was fighting for their lives every single week in, week out, week in, week out. You literally saw it play itself out live and in color, right? And so every week for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2024, it was like, oh snap, it's about to happen. Like they're they've been walking the tightrope, walking a tightrope, and then all of a sudden the season ends and they're 15-2. And they have an opportunity to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. Why? Because good teams have somebody that can close out. They have the ability when a game is that close to say, I know that my kicker, regardless of how you might feel about said kicker for that team, they know that their kicker is one of those guys in the NFL who can actually win a game for them. So that's my challenge here. If the Falcons are trying to move out of being considered a middling team, if they're looking to move into the real conversation with some of the quality teams that can get it done, that can close out and put themselves in contention to either host a wild card game or maybe even win the division, you can't afford to have that most important, arguably the most important person in the third phase of the game dictate how a game is going to be called. That's what happened one time last night, maybe even more in the back of Raheem Morris's mind or in the back of his head, but we just never got to that point because maybe a drive stalled or something to that effect. It's not personal with me, with Parker Romo. What is personal is watching a team that we want good for. We want to see them succeed. We believe they have all the elements on offense. They were walking into this game, number 1 in offense in the NFL in rushing, number 1 overall defense, and then it falls off a cliff. That's a concern for me. That's a problem for me, because that's how you're also falling off a cliff in your own division, looking up, staring up at the Panthers. That is what my problem is. It ain't personal. It's just business that I don't like having to look at and talk about each and every week. Okay. Free.
I mean, I appreciate what you said earlier, T. I live for weeks like this, right? Because like my thing is like, don't get too high off of the wins, don't get too low off of the losses. And people were very high off of the Bills win. Understandably, it was, again, as we said, all
Blue magic high.
Magic high. It was the best win the Falcons have had in a very long time. And so I understood why people were high off of that win. And you have every right to, ride that wave for the 4 days, but don't let that bleed into the next week and go like, oh, well, if they beat the Bills, they should roll over the 49ers. And like, that's what as you said, T, like the season is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And like, as you said, like I try to stay even keel. It's like, okay, they're probably not going to play as well as they played against the Bills on the road, because this has been a consistent issue with this team. They're facing another tough opponent on the road, so they'll probably come back down. The question is going to be, will they be able to make the plays in the end, particularly after they got off to that slow start, to win the game, similar to what we saw, last year in that Week 17 game against Washington, where they got off to a kind of a slow start, besides the running game, and then Penix made the clutch throws, and then the kicker became an issue. Piggyback on what you're saying, T. But now they're coming off of this loss, and people are going to be very low, like, oh well, this team is bad, they're not good, they're frauds, they're poorly coached and whatnot, and then they get to go home and they get to play a soft Dolphins team again. I'm not saying you should overlook the Dolphins. They have some weapons that if the Falcons aren't prepared, that's why we have any given Sunday. They will take advantage of that. So, but the expectation for me is like they'll play better than they played against the 49ers, and they'll probably come back with a win. So like these are the weeks that are like, this is just part of my brand of just like, this is why you got to try to stay even keeled, because it is a long season. And if you ride that emotional roller coaster every single week and feel like after they beat the Bills, like, oh, we're never going to lose a game again. And then after we lose to the 49ers, we're never going to win a game again. Like it's going to be a long season for you guys. That's all I'm going to say. Like, again, if your heart can take it, hey, if you can do that, then more power to you. But I just know for me, I got high blood pressure. I ate far too much fried chicken in my life. The cholesterol is not good. I can't deal with that emotional roller coaster on a week-to-week basis and give you guys 5 good shows a week on Locked On Falcons and 2 good shows on the Falcon Squad, riding that roller coaster every single week. So for me, I can't do that. If that's what you want to do, then do you. But like for me, I just stay in the middle, and we'll see where all the chips fall at the end of the season. And then if they don't go the way then I'll have my crash out in week 18 and week 19 as we're watching all these other teams play in the postseason. And then like, well, the Falcons did this, and I'll be complaining to Jarvis on whatever, those shows are in January. But like for the time being, it's just like, you got to just try to, stay rooted and just keep it in check as the season goes on.
Yeah. And I got to say, Free, you triggered me because that crash out show after the regular season was over last year was just painful. Why would we want to have that kind of feeling in week 7? Because I remember, and listen, I'm not a fan. You guys know I say all the time, I try to be objective with this team, but that was a crash out of epic proportions for our show, because it was unimaginable based on what we knew as the team was constructed. This team is constructed better. So in week 7, we're going to find a way to be even keeled, because there are 11 more weeks total to make it happen. And you got to hope that there's going to be some type of reset for this team, and that, yes, come Sunday, they're actually going to win a game that by all stretches of the imagination, they should. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcons Squad Show your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen, and catch Jarvis as a frequent contributor for Locked On Falcons. And of course, check out Tori's great work at AtlantaFalcons.com. We'll see her next week, and we'll see you next time.